Gerald Ridsdale is one of the worst cases of priest on child abuse in Australia. Beginning in 1993, he's been convicted over and over again for abusing 65 children as young as age 4 between the 60s and the 80s. And surprise, now there's no surprise here, senior figures in the church, right on up to the cardinal, knew about his abuse and protected him. The man was barely ordained when the first complaints about his behavior started coming in. So, what did the church do? Well, they moved him 16 times over 29 years, moving him from past victims and introducing him to new ones, including as a school chaplain for a boys' boarding school in Victoria. Yeah, because that's where you want to put a pedophile. It's likely his abuse goes back to before he even became a priest. There are allegations going as far back as when he was 21 in 1955. His bishop, Ronald Millerns, claimed he didn't know about Ridsdale's abuses until 1975, but a 3-month police investigation would prove otherwise. He knew and simply moved the priest on because that was such a common thing to do for the church to avoid responsibility for themselves rather than have any concern for the children who might be exposed to a pedophile priest. In fact, the priest was moved around a lot after complaints he was abusing boys until he ended up as the chaplain at St. John of God Hospital in Richmond, New South Wales. They did the same with another prolific pedophile priest, Edward Dolan, as well. It was at the hospital where he was finally arrested in February 1993. He would be charged then with 30 counts of indecent assaults on 9 boys, ages 12 through 16, between 1974 and 1980. Bishop of Melbourne would testify that he lived in the same clergy house as Ridsdale back in the 70s, and he knew nothing about the abuses. That was not true. Pell knew. Not only did Pell know, but he tried to bribe at least one victim, Ridsdale's own nephew, to keep quiet, according to the nephew. And Pell himself, well, we'll get to his charges against choir boys in a different video. So at trial number 1, Ridsdale pleads guilty and was sentenced to only 12 months jail, with parole available at 3 months, for 30 incidences of abuse involving 9 boys. He was put on trial again in 1994. This time he pleaded guilty to 46 counts of abuse on 20 boys and 1 girl between 1961 and 1982. For these, he was sentenced to 18 years imprisonment with a minimum of 15 years. In 2006, trial number 3, he pleaded guilty to 35 more counts of indecent assaults on 10 boys between 1970 and 1987 in 6 different places. He was sentenced to 13 years imprisonment with a minimum of 7 years and 3 years concurrent to the sentence he was serving. Sure, because that's all he had left on the sentence he was serving. He would have been eligible for parole in 2013, but he was charged with 84 more offenses involving 14 victims between 1961 and 1981. He pleaded to 29 of those counts, some of the victims being as young as 4 years old, and he was sentenced to 8 more years with parole eligibility in 2019. In 2017, though, trial number 5, he would plead to 20 more offenses. The same year, trial number 6, there are 23 more, and he would receive 11 more years. This brings the number of victims up to 65. And he would now be eligible for parole this year, in 2024. In the most recent case, as of this writing, at sentencing number 8, Ridsdale was at 72 victims, 36 years in jail, and a possible release date in April 2028 at the earliest. Victims began suing as well, including one man who settled for $1.5 million before the matter went to trial for abuse while he was a schoolboy at St. Alypius Boys' School in Ballarat. It wouldn't be until 2019 that the diocese would finally admit that their high-ranking clergy knew about the sex abuse claims and that they tried to protect him from prosecution. The confession would only come when the diocese was sued. In 2012, thanks to advocacy from victims, the Parliament of Victoria established an inquiry into the handling of child abuse by religious and other non-government organizations. In May 2015, there was a royal commission. The inquiries would reveal that the higher-ups knew and moved the priest around because there was a concern that the complaints would become publicly known. In at least one case, every single boy in a school in Mortlake who was between the ages of 10 and 16 had been abused, all of them, by Ridsdale. He even had a 13-year-old boy living with him at the time who he abused nearly daily. Their reports, and these are thousands of pages of them, would detail the breadth and the scope of the abuses and the cover-ups. Cover-ups that allowed prolific and dangerous pedophiles like Gerald Ridsdale to prey on victims for decades. Caulfill's law firm in Australia would like to speak to any witnesses to the abuse committed by priests, and that's any priests, including Gerald Ridsdale. They're representing a number of the victims and can be contacted at 02-9283-5599. They're not sponsoring today's video, believe me. I would love nothing more than to talk about priests. And they are likely not the only law firm involved in representing victims, but if you feel that you want to speak to somebody about your rights and you're living in Australia, they already have experience with the issue. Thank you so much for listening. If you're enjoying these videos and want more, don't forget to subscribe and turn on your notifications so that you don't miss any videos. Thank you for watching. We really appreciate it.